Hey everybody, Shawn Mitchell here again with Paragon Films.
And Preston Smith with Direct Target Products. We're here to talk about a couple different films. One a stiffer and another a softer film.
So we want to talk about a stiff film versus a soft film and what that means in terms of load containment. Because we know with load containment, that is the one variable that we have control over when we're out there in the field testing film amongst literally 15 billion different variables that can be possible in a stretch film test. So when we're talking about containment, we've got the factor of compression and how much force we're putting on that load. And then we've also got the factor of film stiffness. So are we bringing a softer film or a stiffer film into a call? And that's something that really the manufacturer of the film has control over in terms of what resin blends they're using to manufacture that film. So we're going to take a look at film softness versus film stiffness and what that means for things like on-pallet stretch, containment numbers, and the overall performance of a film when we're running it for a customer.
What we see Pete and Preston doing here is a very basic way of determining how stiff or how soft a film is when we're out in the field prior to performing a stretch film audit. A softer film is going to be much easier to stretch, and it's going to stretch further than a stiffer film. A stiffer film is going to take more energy and not want to stretch as far when tested in this way. We sometimes refer to this as resistance to stretch. Typically, we know the characteristics of a film we're bringing into a call, but we don't always know the characteristics of the incumbent film. So it's important for us to do our homework and determine whether or not we're dealing with a stiff or a soft film.
So we've wrapped this load with our stiffer film, and Russ is taking containment measurements on it. And what we're going to do is leave this piece of equipment on the exact same settings, and we're going to run our softer film, and we're going to compare the containment numbers we get with the softer film to the containment numbers we achieve with the stiffer film. And then we're going to analyze things like the on-pallet stretch and the actual usage to determine which film actually requires more usage to achieve those containment numbers.
What we expect to find here is that it takes higher usage with the softer film to achieve the same containment numbers on the load. Our usage was just under 4 ounces on that first test with the stiffer film. Our on-pallet stretch numbers were about 230%, and we were achieving about 15 pounds of containment force across that load. Here's the kicker, and here's the part that you really have to pay attention, especially for the math to all make sense. On our test with the softer film at the same equipment settings, our usage actually went down to 3.5 ounces. However, our containment numbers across this load were in the range of 9 to 10 pounds. This is about 5 pounds less than what we were achieving with the stiffer film. Our on-pallet stretch numbers were actually higher at about 260%, but that makes perfect sense when you consider a softer film is going to stretch much more easily as it passes through the roll carriage. Stay with me while we follow what the math is telling us here. We had a 10% reduction in film usage when we switched to the softer film, but we had a 30% reduction in our overall containment numbers. In order to get back up to that 15 pounds of containment on that load, we're going to have to use much more of that softer film.
So there's always going to be an appropriate application for a softer film formulation versus a stiffer film formulation and vice versa. What we need to keep in mind here is that when we've got that stiffer film formulation that takes more energy to stretch as it goes through the pre-stretch carriage, we've got the possibility of increasing our load containment while using less film, because that film, being stiffer by nature, doesn't want to stretch as much, it can give us higher levels of containment on the load while using less film.
So remember, when we're talking about containment, we've got two factors we need to be concerned with. Compression, which we have control over and can manipulate by changing the settings on the equipment, and film stiffness, which is controlled by the types of resins that are going into that film from the manufacturer.
I want to give one more thank you to Direct Target Products for allowing us to come in and use their equipment and put together this tutorial video outlining some of the characteristics of softer film versus stiffer film. And I hope you've gotten something out of the information in the video in regard to what types of applications you may want to be leading with the softer film versus the stiffer film, and what those two film formulations can do for you and your customers in terms of containment. My name is Shawn Mitchell for Paragon Films, reminding you that stretch film never sleeps.